Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for this special Thursday night episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. We've got a special show for you tonight where tonight's guest is going to come on and talk about a pretty frightening encounter he had back in 2000 and I think it was 2007. Well, before we can do that, we of course need to bring him in here. So why don't we do that now? Ethan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Vic.
Oh, you're welcome. Ethan, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
My name's Ethan. I'm 33 years old. I live in southern Missouri. Been a farmer most of that time. Love to go outdoors, hunting, fishing, stuff like that, and just a down to earth guy.
That you are. Yeah, it didn't take long talking with you to realize how nice of a guy you are. And yeah, what a life you live. That's a great life you've carved out for yourself. I'm jealous. I really am.
Oh, I'm a pretty simple guy. Nothing to be real jealous about.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good way to live. Ethan, late at night when it's dark and quiet, how often do you think about Dogman?
Oh, it's like a thought in the very, very back of my head. I've tried to, deal with it as I can. Try not to let it control me, but I just every now and then, when you're out at night, I can there's that little thought in the back of my head that something's watching. So that's to the extent of it.
Well, that's only natural after having an experience like the one that you had. So, yeah, that's not a shock. How'd you find out about the show?
I can't even remember the name of the podcast, but I was listening to another podcast and they kind of started talking about Dogman a little bit, and then they said if you want to listen to it, if you want a good podcast, and they mentioned your name and your show, so I just looked it up and started listening and really got into it.
Well, it goes without saying, I'm so glad you found out about me and what I do. That's good news. Are you a crop farmer or do you raise livestock?
At the time of the encounter, we were a dairy farm, and then we sold that, and now we primarily do beef cattle. So I'm outside every day messing with something out there.
So you raise beef cattle now. You're more likely to be injured by a beef cattle normally than a dairy cow. Is it harder to do what you do now than what it was back then when you had to get up at 4 a.m. and bring the cows into the barn to milk them?
Oh, no. This is 20 times easier than that. I mean, I still get up pretty early, but I'm not near as crunched for time, and I can be a little late or a little early. It doesn't really matter. Just as long as I get took care of, that's all I worry about.
Well, that's good. Yeah, the reason why I said that is most people who aren't around cows and don't deal with them, they wouldn't know that they say that beef cattle are normally more dangerous than dairy cows because you don't have to handle them as often as you would a dairy cow. I mean, with the dairy cow, you're going to bring it into the barn twice a day. But with beef cattle, for most people, some people don't do this, but most beef farmers, they just leave the cattle out there in the pasture. And if they have to bring them into a chute or something, they'll do that. But otherwise, it's totally hands off. So that's why I said that. Back then, when you had that encounter, like I said just a bit ago, if you're keeping dairy cows, you've got to be up at the crack of dawn, or actually way before that. 4 a.m., bring the cows into the barn in the dark when it's full dark out. I can only imagine how horrible it must have been having to do that still, even though you just had a Dogman encounter. What more can you tell us about that?
It was rough to deal with. Like I said, that morning after it happened, I came home, went to bed, and then I got up that morning to go get cows. And I mean, I didn't sleep. I mean, I won't lie to anybody, didn't sleep. And, being out there in the dark on a four-wheeler ATV, it was scary for quite a while, actually. Probably it took me like a good solid 2 months to kind of calm down and relax about it before it didn't bother me as bad.
Well, I'm glad you got over it eventually. Were there times where you're ready to throw in the towel and say, you know what, I just can't do this because here you've got all those woods around your farm and you've got outbuildings and so many places for that dog man to be hiding. At any point, did you almost throw the towel in and say, you know what, I just can't do this. I give up.
The thought was in my head, but I've done it. I've been a farmer, like I said, most of my life. So just, I kind of, it was kind of one of them deals that I had to work through it and deal with it. I had to deal with it by myself, which was rough. But other than that, I dealt with it, and I didn't try to let it, like I said, I didn't try to let it affect me because, I still got a life to live and I still got to go out here and do these things. So I try not to let it bother me too much. I mean, like I said, I always had that feeling something was there, but I try to shake it off and keep going.
Good man. I'm so glad you're able to do that. I don't need to tell you, a lot of people wouldn't have been able to do that. They would have given up and maybe gone and worked out of a cubicle someplace or something, which, yeah, that'd be horrible if they're forced to do that. Knowing the woods as well as you do, Ethan, do you get frustrated when you hear it postulated that dogman eyewitnesses are just misidentifying black bears for the dogmen they saw?
I mean, I could see it if you don't know what a bear looks like, then yes, I could see, being like, well, I saw a dog man. I mean, bears, when they want to get riled up or territorial, they'll stand up on two legs, let them know you're there. But all you got to do with a bear, get loud and make himself as big as possible and try and scare him off. But I could see some sort of misidentification if, somebody who's not been around one. I mean, you don't see a dog man every day either, but I could see it.
Yeah, I can too. If the subject's far away and it's really dark out and the person doesn't know much of anything about animals, then yeah, that can happen. But there's so many cases where these guys are right on top of an eyewitness where you can definitely see there's more than enough light to see well, but still, that's the go-to. No, it was a black bear. It was just a case of misidentification. Your encounter happened on October of 2007 at a place that's pretty close to your farm that you heard was haunted. What more can you tell us about the place?
Well, it's about roughly 15 minutes away from my where I live at now. Uh, it was just, we call them logging roads, and it's just a road cut through the woods where you can drive trucks down, you can drive four wheelers, side by sides, whatever, and it was down. It wasn't like terribly deep in the woods, but then again, I've been in the woods so much at night doing like coon hunting and stuff like that. It didn't bother me to be down there, and we were just doing it to be, young dumb kids just trying to look for fun on a Friday or Saturday night, whatever night it was, looking for fun on that night. And it's, I mean, it's kind of brushy, but not terribly. Like you can still see pretty good through there. So I mean, it's not bad, but I won't ever go back to it.
Here you two were looking for fun and wound up having a nightmare. That's horrible. It really is. All right, Ethan, please tell us about your encounter now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
But October 2007, I was 17, and a friend of mine, we got together, just we heard about this little supposed haunted spot in the woods, and we just wanted to go check it out because everybody we've heard like some of the old timers around home talk about it, so we want to go check it out. We got in our pickup and drove down there. We pulled on the dirt road and then took the turn into the road, and there's a hand painted sign. People think they own the woods, and it's not theirs to own. They just try to keep you out. Hand painted sign said like something like keep out or stay out or something like that. And us being 17-year-old kids, we ignored the sign and kept driving down in the woods, and it kind of opened up to a spot where you could park the truck or get turned around. So we turned truck around, and, excuse me, and we sat down. We sat on the tailgate, and we sat there for a while. This is probably about 10:30ish at night. A little bit of moonlight out. We just sitting on tailgate listening, seeing if we could hear something paranormal, I guess. And we heard some rustling in the bushes, but like I said, me and my friend, we've both been in the woods. We've been coon hunting, we've been deer hunting, been out in the woods at night. So we just chalked it up to either a raccoon or a deer moving around in the bushes. No big deal. But, you could hear it, but it wasn't, to us, it wasn't nothing of concern. Then we sat there and we got ready to go. So we got up and we shut the tailgate and we're standing there talking. The next thing you know, we heard a rumble and a rustle in the bush pretty close to us, probably roughly 30 yards from us, and it was big. And I was like, we both kind of looked at it and wondering, hey, what the heck is this? Then we heard a low growl, but it was a low growl, but it was like a dog. It sounded like a dog to me. It sounded like a dog-like growl. So we stopped and looked, and then next thing you know, this thing stands up behind this bush. It stands up from behind the bush, and I'm going to guess roughly 6.5, 7 feet tall. And when I saw Vic's logo, that's what jogged my memory about how this thing looked. I mean, it looked just like that. It had the ears, had the yellow eyes, the tail, the stance, everything. This thing stands up, and we get loud. Bear, at that time, bear was pretty rare around here. So if you saw one, it was if you saw one, everybody called you lucky because you actually saw one. And it stood up, and we got loud and yelled and everything, and just stood there. And well, us being country boys and farmers and hunters and all that, we always have some sort of gun in the truck. Well, we got up, or I went to the passenger side of the truck and I grabbed a 22 mag. Now, 22 mag's not a very big gun. It's mainly like a varmint gun or something like that. It's not big, just something. We just carried it around, had it with us, and I pulled it out, and my buddy yelled, still yelling, and then I just pulled the gun up and shot it. I heard if you've been around firearms and you've target shot, hunted, it doesn't matter, target shooting, hunting, whatever, you can hear, if it's close enough, you can hear when a bullet hits. You can hear it's a distinct smack when the bullet hits, and I heard the bullet hit, and I was aiming dead center of it and heard it hit, and this thing just stood there and looked at us. Well, I put the gun in the truck. We hurried up and got in the truck, and he started the truck. Excuse me. He started the truck, and we started to drive out of there. I mean, we couldn't go very fast, but as fast as we could handle it. And we started driving out of the woods. Well, I looked, and this thing's chasing us through the woods. I mean, it's following us through the woods. You can clearly see it running through the woods. And I told my buddy, like, hey, we gotta go, it's following us. And then we get up to that hand painted sign I was telling you about earlier. We get up to it, and it stops right roughly in that area before it crosses that boundary right there. It stops, and it just stands there and looks at us. And when we turn to go back to the highway, back on the dirt road, when we turned to get back on the dirt road, we saw it, and it was standing there still, and then it just turned around and it went back in the woods. And so we drove to town. We got back to town to drop me off to my truck, and we sit there and talked about it a little bit. And my buddy's like, oh, it was just a bear. It's just a bear. And I'm like, bears don't have dog ears and sound like a dog. They don't, bears don't make that noise. And he just chalked it up. Well, we just got chased by a bear or something. It wasn't nothing serious. And he shook it off, but it bothered me bad. Like I said, it bothered me bad, and I got home, and in my mind, like most other people that don't know what they're looking at, I was like, well, it was a werewolf. That's what I said. It was a werewolf, and I I uh, I didn't sleep that night. Like I said, I did not sleep that night, and then 4 o'clock in the morning hit. My alarm goes off to go get the dairy cows, and I get up and go outside, and I get my 4-wheeler and start it, and then I get up, get my 4-wheeler, go start it, and then I go down to the field to start getting cows. Start getting around the cows and bringing them up to the barn. And that whole time, I'm scared to death, scared out of my mind. And I mean, it messed with me really, really bad. And like I said, I didn't have nobody to talk to. My friend, chalked it up as a bear encounter or something. Uh, I and I'm out there in the pitch black dark before sun comes up. A few hours before this, I just got chased out of the woods of what I thought was a werewolf. I'm scared to death. Don't want to be out there. And it took me it took me about 2 months. About 2 months. It kind of took me to get kind of shove it back in my mind and deal with it on my own and just do what I had to do, like I had to do. And then I would say roughly end of December, sometime beginning of January. Down below our milk barn, we pushed out a bunch of trees to clear out for some more pasture ground. We pushed out a bunch of trees, and at the time I had a pit bull dog, and me and this thing were close. I mean, he was a big dog, wasn't scared of nothing, hated coyotes. He'd go fight coyotes if you didn't get him in at night, stuff like that. And I wake up one night, and he's sitting there staring out my bedroom window, which is on the second story, and you can't see the barn or anything from there. And he's just staring out my window, and he's got a growl, like a real defensive, ready to fight growl. I said, "What's going on?" I said, "What's going on, buddy? Do you need to go outside?" Well, he ran to the door, my bedroom door. I opened it. We go downstairs, go out the back door. I grab my flashlight, and we start walking. And then you round the corner by my parents' house where I was living at. You round the corner, and you can see the front of the barn, and you can see where we've been logging at. Well, I looked down there, and it was another pretty well lit moon that night, and I see the thing that I saw in the woods 2.5 months ago. I see that same outline walking across where we had just dozed. It walked across, and it stopped because my dog was standing there growling. It stopped. It looked at me and him. I would say roughly 10, maybe 15 seconds. And then it turned its head, and it kept walking through the field and kept going south of the house. And after that reignited that whole being, something's out there in the woods, something's out there in the dark or in the woods watching me. It messed with me. It messed with me for a while, but I hadn't, I didn't have anything else happen, anymore that I'm aware of anyways, happen. And so, like I said, I just kind of put it in the back of my mind. Then I finally, accepted it and moved on. And I accepted that what I saw was either a werewolf or something nobody else around here knows about. And I live in an area where you can't go tell somebody you saw a Sasquatch or a Dogman, and they take you serious. They'll laugh at you. And so, I kept it to myself, and I really hadn't really thought about it a whole lot about the encounter, but that feeling that something's always out there in the woods watching me it's always there. I mean, it's still there to this day. Not as intense, but it's still there. I mean, I still get it every once in a while when I go outside in the dark to check a cow that we got in the pen next to the house, or I have used wood for my heat in the winter, and I go outside and check my wood fire, and I feel like something's standing out there in the edge of the yard just watching me. But uh, you know, I try not to let it bother me, and just keep trying. I try not to let it bother me and try to do the best that I can with it. And I found, like I said, I found this show through another podcast, and I'm listening to it pretty religiously. And I heard I heard an encounter kind of similar to mine. Getting chased out of the woods and everything and running off. And I sat there and I just said, well, I need to get this. I need to get this story out there. Just get this story out there for some other people. Get it out there for others to hear and let them know that you know it can happen to anybody and anywhere. Um, and maybe me coming forward, maybe somebody else is sitting there struggling with a encounter and they don't really want to talk about it. Maybe they can. Maybe this will help them realize, you may be dealing with it in your own way or whatever, but if you talk about it, maybe it can give you some kind of closure on it. Because after my first conversation with Vic, I felt a little bit more, I felt a lot more at ease here lately, being outside and, with my little bit of research that I consider research doing, I realized that it could have, if this thing wanted to kill me and my friend that night, we could have been killed that night. And, they're they could be watching you right now. You could be sitting outside and they could be watching you right now, and you don't have no idea. Because like I said, this thing just come out of nowhere. It seemed like. And then, if I can, I've told Vic several times, if it's anything comes out of this and I can help somebody or help them with, having to deal with this, then that's why I kind of want to do this, to see if, let people know that this can happen to anybody, anywhere, anytime, and you never know when it is going to happen. But that's my encounter.
Really is a shame that experiences like that have to happen to people, but as you found out firsthand, they do. They do, unfortunately. When you saw that Dogman at the farm, did thoughts ever come to mind that maybe it was the same Dogman you and your buddy saw that was coming back to pay you some retribution, out to get retribution for you shooting it? Or did thoughts like that even cross your mind?
I mean, at the time when the one at the farm happened, I was just thinking, holy crap, this thing's here. Like, I got one here, and I couldn't tell you if it was the same one or not, but part of me did think, I mean, it could be the one that came through, it could be the one that I shot, and maybe he's like, hey, I got your scent, I know where you live, so let's I'm back, just to let you know, hey, I'm here, I know where you're at, so here I am.
Wow, I can only imagine the thoughts that must have been going through your head. That's intense. How far is that place where you and your buddy had that first encounter from your farm?
It's I want to say roughly 15 minutes northwest of my house. I mean, like I say, I could drive there right now and I could take you right to the road, but I I haven't been down that road in years. I refuse to go down that road after this experience. I mean, that's the only like real bad negative thing I could get out of it is I don't go down a dirt road this one dirt road anymore. Like, I avoid it like the plague. And I've had people want to go down this dirt road, and I tell them I don't want to go this way. I don't like this road or something. So it's like 15, 20 minutes, I'd say, from the house.
That's pretty close. Too close for comfort. Is it possible to get to that spot, the haunted spot, from your farm without ever leaving the woods?
You could do it. It would. I mean, there's a couple highways you'd have to cross, but I mean, I've seen deer, traveling a pretty good little radius around the house, but I've seen deer travel quite a ways. Some same deer at my place have been in a neighbor's place, 5 minutes away, 5 minutes away from me. So it wouldn't shock me that something could come through the woods, come through the woods and cross them. I mean, like I said, it had to cross a couple of highways, but nothing major.
Well, it could probably go underneath the highway too, following a creek or something like that, I'm sure, couldn't it?
Oh yeah, I know at least of one creek that is something or this Dogman or something could go through the creek to get to there too. I mean, uh, like I say, there's a lot of national forest, between me and my house. I mean, like I was telling you the other night, you can look up my driveway and see national forest right in front of my house, in front of my driveway. So all that connects pretty well, pretty solidly, other than a few farms and houses here and there in between. But if it wouldn't surprise me a bit if something went through the river or something like that to get around.
Yeah, it just might have. And 15 minutes away, that might seem like a pretty good distance to the uninitiated, but for a dogman, yeah, that is just a hop, skip, and a jump, unfortunately. From what I understand, that friend who was with you when you had that first encounter isn't with us anymore. What happened to him?
He, like I said, we're country boys and stuff like that. We're country boys and farmers. He used to do rodeos, and I used to work the bulls at the rodeos, and he had a bull riding accident that November. Not roughly about a month from the time it happened. He had a bad bull riding accident and died on the way to the hospital. So
Wow.
Yeah, it was a rough time, like I said. And then the only other person that experienced this with me wasn't here, so I had nobody else.
Yeah, that's horrible. How old was he?
17. I just that October actually I just turned 18. I just turned 18. I was 17 going on 18 when the encounter happened, right before my 18th birthday, and then he was 17. So we were juniors in high school.
Way too young for something like that to happen. Was that a junior rodeo? Because if he wasn't even 18, he couldn't ride with the men, could he?
No, they have the rodeos we did. They had a junior class, so it wasn't near as how do I put it? Not near as nasty or mean bulls. Like they were still They were learning they were being trained how to become bucking bulls. And like I say, it was just a freak accident. Bull got under his vest. He wore a protective vest and a helmet. The bull just got in between the vest and his shirt and poked. And I don't know exactly what happened, how that happened, but he got poked and broke something, and it punctured some. I don't remember. Like I said, it's been years. I just know it was a bad rodeo accident, and I was there. That's all I can tell you. I was there.
Yeah, I'd say it must have been a bad rodeo accident. Yeah, with him being 17 underage like that, yeah, it's not like they're going to put him on bodacious or anything. But yeah, I guess even with the tamed down bulls that aren't experienced, it could be awfully dangerous still, unfortunately. Well, let's get into the listener questions now, Ethan. Before I do that, though, if you have a question for Ethan and you're in the live chat, please be sure to type your question in all caps. That way I won't miss it. Or at least hopefully I'm not going to miss it. The first question for you, though, is from David Smooth. And Dave wants to know, hi, Ethan, did the Dogman have a blodge on its back, like a hunchback sort
of? It's hard to tell because it was, like I said, this thing was, when it stood up, it was facing us. I mean, it may have been hunched. Like I said, I don't know. I didn't have time to I didn't give myself a whole lot of time to examine what was happening. I was just trying to get out of a bad situation and hopefully not make a worse situation out of it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, you're doing good to know your own name. You're just trying to get out of there in one piece. So that's totally understandable that you didn't pick out certain details like that. I've got another one for you from Do Something Diff. And that question is, Ethan, was it slim or was it wide with big shoulders?
Um, it was wide. Yeah, it was wide. And it was muscular. I know that. I mean, I couldn't see like, perfect muscle tone because, like I said, it was a lit night, but it wasn't perfect. And a perfect condition where I could explain it perfectly. But it was it stood. It was wide with big shoulders, and it was big for sure.
Oh, I'm sure it was. If it was only 7 feet tall, though, that's a juvenile. That's a small dog, man. But when you see a 7-footer, that's still going to get your motor running. So I understand. I've got a question for you that you already answered, but no one's perfect. I'll just answer this for David. David Smooth asked it. He wants to know, did it follow you home? Well, he did have an encounter with another dog man that morning. His dog alerted him to its presence that morning, but he thinks it just might have been the same dog man. He doesn't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised in the least if it was the same one. The next question is from Shannon Ubenazer, and Shannon's question is, maybe I missed it, but what state and county did this happen in? Now, that's up to you whether you answer that and give a specific location, Ethan, but if you want to answer it, you can.
It happened in I live in southern Missouri, so it happened in southern Missouri. I don't really know what county it happened in because that spot's kind of a weird lay of how our counties come together right there. So it could be one of 3 that I know of, but I honestly couldn't tell you what county, but it was in southern Missouri.
That's accurate enough. Looks like Zareth the Alchemist is who typed the next question. They want to know, what was your very first thought when you saw it?
Well, like I said, at first, I thought maybe a bear. Like I said, at that time around here, bears were rare. They were here, but not seen very often. And this thing, like I said, first thought was it's a bear. But then when you start looking and you start seeing the dog ears and the canine shaped head and everything, that's when I realized we weren't dealing with a bear.
No, you weren't. You definitely weren't. Having cattle on the farm, and I'm sure you had some other animals around too, did you ever suffer any losses? Strange losses?
Not really. I have a neighbor. Then like a couple of days after the one at the farm happened, I had a neighbor. He probably lives, I would say, roughly a quarter mile from my house where I live, and I saw him at breakfast or something. Then a couple of days later, and he was telling me how a couple nights ago, the night of the farm encounter, he was like, "Man, my dogs were going crazy. You could hear him barking you go out there right now and hear him barking. I guarantee you." But he said, "Man, my dogs are acting crazy the other night. Like I've never seen them so scared, and they were whimpering and scared, and they wanted in the house." And he's like, "I opened the door and they all come in and curled up around my feet and wouldn't leave the house till the next day." And I was like, man, maybe they got a whiff of something they didn't like. I don't know. How dogs are."
Oh, yeah. That I do. Did your dog ever do that? Was he ever reluctant to go outside after that one morning?
Not really. I mean, like I said, he was more of a protector kind of dog. Like, he did not like coyotes. This dog, they start howling. They pipe up here at night, and his ears would perk up. And like I said, if he wasn't inside, if outside during the night, he would run off and he'd go. This dog would fight him. That's how he died. He got in a fight with him and they finally overtook him, but he would fight these things. He was real protective, and he just wanted to be outside and prowl around and make sure nothing or nobody was messing with nothing they shouldn't be.
Sounds like he had security down pat. I'm so sorry to hear that you lost him, though. How big was he? You said he was a pit.
Oh golly, he was I don't remember how much he weighed. He was a really muscular pit bull. I will say that he was a very muscular pit bull, and he was heavy. I can tell you that. I mean, this sucker laid in bed with me every night. I thought it was just like laying next to a full size human most nights. So he's pretty big.
He must have been big. Yeah, pits can be pretty darn big. That they can. Well, I've got another question for you. This one's from Joe, and Joe wants to know, how scary looking are these dogmen? Can you describe what they look like?
Well, they're pretty terrifying. I'm not gonna lie, they're pretty terrifying. If you've never seen anything like that, I mean, the unknown's scary as it is, but you see something like that, you're scared. I mean, you're terrified. I mean, that's all there is to it. They're pretty scary, and they'll make you think. What if you can see that, then what else is out here? And that's how I was, and best I can describe from my experience. Now, there's different types, So, but from my experience, it was, if you see Vic's logo, that's what it looked like to me. I mean, that's what mine roughly looked like to me. Same ears, yellow eyes, tail, standing on two legs. I mean, they're. You don't want to see one. I hope nobody here ever has to see one, because it's a game changer, and it makes you sit and think about what could actually be out there in the woods.
Yes, it does. If they can be out there, what else can be out there? It makes you wonder if there's something that is even more frightening than them. You never know. I've got another one for you from Mike 777. Yeah. And Mike wants to know, did you try to speak to it in the second sighting?
No, I did not. Like I said, this dog, like my dog, he just he reacted to something outside. He reacted to something going on outside, and I didn't sit and talk to it. I didn't try to talk to it. I was more shocked. And scared, trying not to pee my pants, because this thing's just as close. It's right by my house now, so I didn't think to talk to it or nothing, but we looked at each other. It made eye contact with me and the dog for about 10 or 15 seconds, and then it just turned and walked straight to the south. So no, I didn't try to speak to it.
I understand. You had a lot on your mind at the time. The next one is from Philip Blair, and it's more of a general question I'm going to take. He wants to know, has a dogman ever dined on human meat? I'm pretty sure they have, but it definitely doesn't seem to be a common occurrence. I've gone over this several times before on shows, multiple shows in the past. You're listening to someone who's literally spoken with thousands upon thousands of dogman eyewitnesses. And the grand total of credible eyewitnesses who've ever told me about being intentionally harmed by the dogman or dogmen they encountered is a whopping 6 or 7. So that right there tells me that these guys cannot be wired to kill you as soon as the opportunity presents itself. If they were wired that way, then there's no way I would have spoken with thousands upon thousands of people. Tons of them were caught dead to rights in very compromising situations where if the dogman wanted to dispatch them, haul them off into the woods, do whatever, no one else in the world would ever be the wiser. But instead of that happening, the dogman allowed them to leave without a single scratch. So that tells me that, yeah, these guys cannot be wired to try and rip you apart as soon as the opportunity presents itself. Now, that doesn't preclude the chance that if you have a dogman encounter, that the one that you encounter might not try to harm you or kill you. Because, yeah, for anything that's out there, you're going to find deviant examples, whether you're talking about pigs or camels or horses or goats, house cats, you name it, elephants. If it has teeth and or claws or the ability to hurt you, period. Well, if it's having a bad day, if you have a deviant example, people even, they're deviant people, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy. So yeah, it's so widespread. You name the critter out there, like I said, and you're going to find deviant examples that will harm you or kill you if they can. So why should Dogman be any different? But that's not a common thing when it comes to looking across the big picture, the numbers of Dogmen out there. No, it's not something where it's not a case where every Dogman is going to try and do that if you have an encounter with one. But yeah, to answer your question, Philip, unfortunately, I think it has happened before. I wouldn't be surprised. The next question would be from Robert Dockstater. And Robert's question is, when it was chasing you guys, was it on 2 or 4 legs?
The best that I can remember, like I said, it's been a while ago, but it started out on 2, and then when I looked out the back glass, it was on 4, and then like we got to like I said, when we passed that little homemade sign or whatever, this thing stopped and it stood up. It was standing up when it stopped, so I think it was chasing us on 4 and then transitioned back to 2. From best that I can remember.
It must have really shaken you up when it went up onto 2 legs.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I said, the thing stood up and then it chased us, and then it's standing there in the edge of the woods watching us leave. So yeah, it was. We were shook. I was shook up. I don't know about my buddy, but I was real shook up.
Oh, I'm sure he was too. I bet money on that. The next question is from Daniel J. And Dan's question is, did your pit bull see it when you went outside, and how did it react?
Yeah, he did see it. I'm almost positive he saw it, but he didn't like sit down or whimper and tuck his tail between his legs. He was standing up, and like the hair on the back of his neck, you know how dogs get when they are threatened or scared, threatened or wanting to get mad. Their hair stands up on their neck. I know that hair was standing up on his neck, and he was staring straight in the direction that it was at, and he followed it as it walked to the south from where it stopped. And whenever it got done looking, it walked off. He followed it, and then being a curious dog, he kind of wanted to go after it. But as I yelled at him, said, "Hey, let's go in the house." He turned around and went to the house, and he was on high alert for the rest of the night. He sat by the door. He's sitting there looking at the door most of the night.
I'm so glad he listened to you and turned around, because I don't think it would have gone well if he would have headed into the woods. We've got another one for you from Michael Reese. And Michael wants to know, Ethan, could you tell what color its hair was?
The first encounter, not really, because like I said, it was trying to hurry it, like instinct took over, trying to get out of a bad situation, like trying to get out of a bad predicament or something like that. So like I didn't really pay attention, I shot and that was it. Then I would say the second one had better lighting that night, and it kind of had the same colors, it looked kind of the same colors as a coyote, like the grays and the browns and everything mixed in. But that's the best I can tell you. It looked like had the coloration of a coyote.
That's a good description. The next one is from Be Kind. I try to be. Their question is, did you feel a shift in the atmosphere?
Not really. Like, I hear a lot of these stories that I've listened to, and people have said, that existential dread kicks in, like I'm going to die. I didn't really think anything was at the time. I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew I needed to get myself out of the situation and back, to civilization or out of that area or whatever. But it never felt awkward or strange feelings or anything like that. And then even in this second encounter, I didn't know what was going on. My dog was just freaking out about something in the backyard for all I knew. So as far as I knew, it was a possum in the backyard or something. Then walked outside, and I mean, I froze. I didn't feel anything in the atmosphere, but I froze when I saw it and got a little startled and scared.
Sure would have been awfully nice if it would have just been a possum back there. Yeah, a lot better than a Dogman. I've got another one for you from Keith from 1675. And Keith wants to know, did the cattle react in any way, maybe showing distress?
Uh, at the cattle, where were they? They were to the north. I mean, and when it came from the north, the direction it was walking, it looked like it came from the north. But the cattle were in a backfield, and as far as I could tell, even the next morning, getting up to go get them, they didn't seem to be bothered by anything. They're just mad that I woke them up and making them go up to this barn again.
Well, that beats alternative. Thank goodness it wasn't out there giving them a hard time. And I've got another great question for you from Anthony. You guys are asking some great questions tonight. I'm really impressed. Anthony wants to know, have you ever seen Bigfoot on the property?
Not any kind of signs or anything like that. I mean, I'm not real well versed or well researched on Bigfoot, so I couldn't tell you. There could be one here for all I know. I mean, there could be one here, but as far as I know of right now, as of tonight, I haven't seen anything like that.
Well, that's good. Yeah, you've got that Dogman possibly hanging around. You don't need Sasquatch coming around if they're the unfriendly type, that is, complicating things. Yeah, that definitely wouldn't be good. Not good at all. The next question would be from Truth Iris, and their question is, what was the story or stories of why that area was considered to be haunted?
Well, so the story was years ago, and like I said, the old timers were telling us these stories when we were kids, trying to scare us and everything. Story goes, there's a guy went down there. Went down there to deer hunt, and supposedly he went crazy because he kept hearing voices and seeing stuff and stuff like that. And his wife hadn't heard from him in so many days, and so she called the sheriff and the conservation and asked them to go out there and check on him. And when they got there, the campsite was abandoned. His gun was laying in the tent. Everything. It was like he just got up and walked away. Like no sign of like a struggle or anything like that. And, like I said, we thought it, and it might be true. I don't know. We didn't ever hear nothing, but it was just a story that a bunch of old timers, like our grandparents and great grandparents, told us to scare us, I guess, just to get a rise out of us.
Yeah, I hope it's not true. That wouldn't be good at all. The next one is from Baby Girl, and her question is, did it give off a foul odor?
I didn't notice anything different smelling in the woods at the time. Like I said, I've been in the woods a lot. I never smelled anything like I never smelled anything like wet dog or rotten flesh or anything like that whenever my encounters.
I see. Now, you've already established the fact that people in your area poo-poo things like that. If someone came forward and talked about seeing a Dogman or a booger or something like that, but did you ever try to share that experience with any family members? And if so, how'd they respond?
I didn't talk to any family members about it because, like I say, my dad is a very no nonsense kind of guy when it comes to stuff like that, like ghost stories. He don't believe ghosts. He don't believe Bigfoot. He don't believe any of that stuff. My mom is a little bit more, like, oh, ghosts are real and stuff like that. But she's kind of like my dad, Bigfoot. Grandparents are the same way. Bigfoot, that doesn't exist. It's like we were talking earlier, may have misidentified it as something else. Like it could have been a bear or it could have been this or that.
Isn't it funny how so many people will believe in things that you can't touch, but when it comes to things like Dogman and Sasquatch, you most definitely can. No, that's crazy. Not buying that. It's a free country. I guess you can think whatever you want. The next question for you is from Chelsea Brotherson. And Chelsea's question is, did you believe in Dogman before your encounter?
I did not know what a dog man was, to be honest with you. I mean, you hear the stories. I think the big popular thing at that time was the Michigan dog man, but and that video that come out with it charging through the woods and everything. But I chalk that up as hoax or whatever, because I mean, how did they find this video in the middle of the woods in the winter in Michigan? I mean, but I never knew what a dog man was, and it wasn't until about a year or so ago when I found the podcast. I still didn't know what a dog man was. I considered it a werewolf, and that's what I thought it was.
Yeah, I had every reason to believe that. That's for sure. The next question is from Robert Dockstetter, and Robert's question is, were the eyes glowing?
I would guess they were. I mean, I saw the color of them. I mean, yeah, I would say they were yellow. I don't remember. I don't think there was the second encounter had the yellow eyes that I can recall, but the first one I did notice the yellow eyes, but we didn't have flashlights shining in its eyes or anything like that. We were just kind of, like, oh my God, what is this thing that just stood up in front of us?
Amongst other thoughts going through your head. So, yeah, that's understandable. And a little bit ago, Zareth the Alchemist asked if you had heard about any boogers being in the area. But that question was asked about 5 minutes ago, so he's already answered that. He said, not that he has heard of, but I'm sure they're there. That's a prime area. So I'd be surprised if they weren't. And earlier on, right around the very start of the show, I saw a question or a comment from D Truth. I can't really remember exactly how he posed it. Here, I'm going to scroll up here. I want to find it so I can quote him. Where is that question? It was a good comment because it was said in a jocular manner, but there's a serious answer to that question. Okay, here it is. Yeah, D Truth said, I thought Vic was going to say cattle are more dangerous than dogmen. Laugh out loud. Well, cattle actually are more dangerous than dogmen. And I'll tell you why. A bit ago, I mentioned the fact that I've spoken with thousands upon thousands of dogman eyewitnesses about their encounters, and the grand total of credible eyewitnesses who've ever told me about intentionally being harmed by one is a whopping 6 or 7. That's a paltry figure when it comes to the pool of thousands upon thousands of eyewitnesses I've spoken with. Well, the reason why I know that cattle are much more dangerous to be around than dogmen is the fact that if you spoke with thousands upon thousands of people like Ethan here, who have had direct contact with cows, with cattle, and asked them, okay, how many of you have ever been intentionally harmed by a cow or a cattle that you've interacted with? That number would be in the hundreds. It would be in the hundreds. If you spoke with people about horses, like I said earlier, that figure also would be in the hundreds. So that does tell you, as hard to believe as it might be, the numbers clearly show that if you have an interaction with the dog man, the odds of you being harmed are actually a lot lower than if you interact with a cow or a horse or a pig or a camel or an elephant. You name the animal. So that's something to think about. The numbers don't lie. I know that's going to have a lot of people up in arms, but the numbers don't lie. Let's look for the next question. Let me scroll all the way back down here. The next one is from Ready Steady Retro. And their question is, question for Ethan, do you ever dream about dogmen or about that night since it happened?
Not many years. I haven't had a dream. Now, after it happened, I dreamed about the whole thing going in my head, the whole being chased by this, like I said, at the time, not knowing better, being chased by a werewolf, that's not something that happens to the everyday man. You don't get chased by things like that usually. So I had a little bit of nightmarish type dreams about it. I mean, but like I said, I just try to work through it on my own and not let it get to me and just kind of, because like I said, I'd be outside in it, dealing with it outside every day, didn't have a choice. So I try not to let it bother me. And I eventually, like I said, I have not in years haven't had a dream or anything about one.
Well, thank goodness for that. I hope your nights of having nightmares about these guys are a thing of the past. But I'm wondering, when you did have those nightmares back then, did you have nightmares about the encounters you actually had, or were they about other things, imaginary scenarios that never happened with these guys?
Um, some of for the most part, it was like it was almost like watching a movie. Pretty much is how it felt like watching a movie. Whenever you just see it happening from a distance, see the thing chasing you, and and everything like that. And then like the one at the farm, that one, I had one really bad one about that one, and it, like I said, this was a minor compared to what I dealt with in the woods. But the one at the farm, I had dreams where I do the whole thing, let the dog out, and this thing come running at me, and then I'd wake up scared, sweating, panting, and everything else. But for the most part, it was just like sitting back in a movie and just reliving, watching the moment from a distance, watching everything that happened, or for me, what happened.
That nightmare didn't hold a candle to that first encounter you had, but I'm sure it was definitely bad enough. I don't doubt that at all. Be Kind has another question for you. They want to know, I'm curious, by chance, are you RH blooded? Just trying to find a connection.
I don't know. I don't have a clue. I don't know right off the top of my head.
Oh, that's all right. I couldn't tell you my blood type either, so no harm, no foul at all. This might seem like a strange question to ask you, Ethan, but there's a reason behind it. At any time in your life, and there's a funny story behind this question too. I've had so many people ask this question, they answer it in such a funny way. I'll get to that in just a bit, though. I'm getting ahead of myself. At any time in your life, have you ever played in any way with a Ouija board?
Nope, no, I'm not that kind of guy. I don't. Uh, I'm a religious guy. I believe in God and stuff, and that's just I've never heard of a good experience with one of those, and I just feel like that's just a surefire way to make sure that something bad is going to happen, and I don't want no part of them, and I avoid them if they are ever brought up or around.
Good idea. That's a really good idea to stay away from them. Now, back to what I was hinting at. You would not believe how many times behind the scenes I've asked eyewitnesses that very question. In return, the response I've gotten was, no, I've never played with the Ouija board before. No. And then I go and start to say something. Well, besides the one time when I was in college, but I only played with it for 15 minutes, so that doesn't count. And I'm thinking, what in the world? That's playing with a Ouija board. But yeah, it seems like when I ask that question about, I say about 90% of the time, maybe 95% of the time, when I ask that question, the answer is yes. So maybe there is a connection there. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a definite connection. Anyway, the next question for you is from Robert Doxteter, and Robert wants to know, if your buddy was still alive, what do you think he would have thought about your second encounter?
Oh, he would have laughed at me, he would have laughed at me and told me I was dreaming or half asleep whenever I walked out the door. I mean, like I said, he sat there and he thought it was a bear. He thought it was a bear that chased us out of the woods. And I mean, like I told him, bears don't have dog ears. They don't have dog-shaped heads. They don't growl like a dog. So, I mean, all the things that point to me is a dog thing. Or I didn't say to him werewolf, but he would have laughed and joked around.
Knowing you as well as he did, he had to know that you knew animals inside and out. So there's no way you're going to mistake a black bear for what you actually saw. So If he did pose that idea, shame on him. That wouldn't be right. The next question is from Mike 777. Yeah. And Mike wants to know, did you go back to look for tracks? He's asking about the second encounter.
No. And it was I didn't go look for tracks, and it was because I didn't want to look for tracks because I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know that I didn't want to know it was around. I mean, and there very possibly could have been tracks there because, like I said, it was freshly dozed ground. So, I mean, it was soft and, anything. I mean, I walked through there because, like I said, we cleared it out, trees and cut trees up for, logs and firewood and stuff. So, I mean, we left footprints down there all the time. So they were probably there, but like I said, I was not curious enough to go look because I didn't want to know.
Yeah, sometimes it's better not to know. So I don't blame you there. After you had that second encounter, though, Ethan, has anything at all ever happened on your property, close to your property, around it, that you think just might have been Dogman related?
Not that I'm aware of. Like, we haven't, I haven't heard of anything like cattle or, because like I say, we've got a bunch, we got a lot of neighbors around us that, they raise cattle too. And never heard any of them come up and say, well, man, I had a cow, got mauled or anything. I never had anything like that. Never, like I said, the only thing that had happened was the neighbor that lived down the road said that night that I had the second encounter, the night that he said that night his dogs were scared and whimpering and wanting in the house and stuff like that. But that was all I ever heard about.
Well, thank goodness there wasn't much in the way of activity. That might have been Dogman related activity, but it's better to have to guess than to know. I've got one for you from Chelsea of Brotherson. Chelsea wants to know, do you worry about having another encounter?
I don't. I mean, that thought's there, that it could possibly happen, but you never know with these things. I mean, like I say, I hunt religiously. I mean, every year I'm a turkey hunter. I'm a deer hunter. Not so much into coon hounds anymore, but I used to go coon hunt when I was, in high school in my early 20s. And, I've been out in the dark tracking deer after I've shot them or something like that and never ran into anything since then. So I hope to never have one, but there is a possibility, they could show back up and they could still be here for all I know.
Yeah, they might. I hope they're not, but it's possible they might be sticking around. I've got another one for you from Joao Carlos Fernandez Papasidio. And Joao's question is, what do you believe they are? Animals, aliens, spirits, demons?
For me, I believe they're a flesh and blood creature because, I mean, I've never shot a ghost or an alien or a demon or anything like that. But, like I said, I shot this thing and I heard a bullet hit it. I heard the bullet smack and hit this thing. And that just right there told me, looking back even now, this thing was real. Like, it's a live flesh and blood creature.
Yeah, it just might be right. It's so hard to know for sure what they are. All we can do is guess. This question is more of a general question from Save the Last Zombie. And that question is, what is the tallest recorded or reported Dogman? The tallest reported Dogman from a credible source I've ever heard about was 11, 12 feet. Now you can hear stories about 14, 17, 20 foot, 50 foot, 90 foot tall dogmen, but I don't buy any of that. I think they probably top out at 11 or 12 feet. Could be wrong, but that's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. The next question would be from Ready Steady Retro. And their question is, do you have, or if you have children now or in the future, would you educate them about dogmen?
Well, I don't have any children right now, but uh, I mean, I would tell my children, if I tell my kids about this and just kind of leave it up to them if they want to believe it or not. You know, uh, it's one of them things. You can only tell somebody something. Tell somebody something. And if they take it how they want to take it, I mean, if they want to believe that, oh my gosh, Dad saw Dogman, or oh, Dad was probably in the woods doing something he shouldn't have been doing, and just had a hallucination, whatever, like I say, I would tell them the story, but I would leave it up to them to decide how they wanted to deal with it.
That's admirable. As you know, you're going to have kids that you know your kids better than anyone. There are kids out there that a parent's going to know, okay, this kid right here, I've got no business telling them anything like this. But yeah, for most kids, I think it would be a good idea to let them know. Forewarned is forearmed. That is above a certain age, of course. You don't want to tell a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old something like that. But yeah, I think it is a good idea above a certain age to make sure they know what's really out there and not to lie to them. So that's a good policy to have, in my opinion. Looks like Keith from 1675 has another question for you. Keith wants to know, while hunting, have you encountered any animal kill sites that seemed unusual?
Not nothing out of the normal, because I mean, I if you've ever been hunting, like you gut the animal and everything, and you try to do it there in the woods, away from the house to keep everybody happy from not having to smell anything. So, but I've seen, but that's like a bit like around here. That's like the big thing. Like during deer season or anything like that, coyotes. That's all they do all night long. You got a gut pile in the woods. That's where they're at. Or you had a cow. We've had cows die, and we've got a spot on the place that we take them when they're dead, and that night you can hear the coyotes cutting up and back there eating. So, but as for unusual kill sites, no, I've never seen anything like that I know of.
Well, I'm sure you'd know if you saw one. Zereth the Alchemist is another one for you. He wants to know, ever heard of any crazy weird howls in the woods?
No, not. You'll hear coyotes every once in a while. They'll have a different tone to them and stuff. But like I said, I've been in the woods most of my life and hunted and stuff like that, and I've never heard anything strange and unusual that hasn't been out of place or anything like that.
Well, hopefully that means there's not a population around on a regular basis, at least. Andrew Whiteman has a question for you. Andrew wants to know, wouldn't telling kids about dogmen be along the same lines as warning them about sharks?
I mean, I would, yeah. But like I don't deal with sharks, so I would have to put it in some other terms, like, oh, but like if you encounter now bears actually populated here, like it's actually recognized here now, and I'd be like, well, if you're in the woods, you see a bear, stuff like that, but uh, yeah, it would be along the same lines, like, hey, watch out for sharks or watch out for bears or whatever. But until I have a kid, I won't be able to tell you what it'd be like to tell them like it's that or a shark. They'll probably believe me more about a shark than they will about a dog man.
Yeah, they probably would. I can guarantee it'd be interesting trying to explain it to them, though. That's a given. We've got a comment. It's not a question from D Truth. He said, can you imagine what an attraction a dogman would be in a zoo? Yeah, that would pack in the visitors. Definitely would. But
yeah, it would definitely. No, you're fine. I was just saying it would definitely open your eyes up to what they are, and what they can do. Like what they are. I mean, you could see what they could do. I guess if they were ready to. I mean, these things can do what they want, when they want, where they want. So if it didn't want to be there in that cage anymore, it could just break out of that cage and go back out to doing what it did before.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be very easy to keep them in captivity at all. Well, it's about time for us to get out of here, Ethan. But before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
I just want to say thank you to you, Vic, for getting in contact with me and talking to me, and finally let me have somebody to tell this to that will actually listen. And if anybody, like I said before, if anybody out there is having a hard time with one of these encounters, it's scary. I can tell you 100% fact, it's scary, and it'll mess with you, and I know it will. But if you're struggling with this and you don't, you're like me and don't have really anybody to talk to about it, then reach out to Vic and, submit a report. You don't have to come on the show and do it. I wanted to come on the show to do it, because if this story can help anybody, then, as long as if somebody got something out of this and it helps them in the long run, then I feel like I've done something, But like I say, don't let it eat at you. Try your best. I know it's hard, but try your best not to let it eat at you, and try to get help so you don't sacrifice the things you love, all because of a bad encounter that you had and scared you into staying in the house. Because just because you're in the house doesn't mean you're safe. Just like being in the daylight doesn't mean you're safe.
That's all very well said. Because you're right. Yeah, being in the house, that doesn't mean you're safe at all, not by a long shot. If a dogman wants to get you and it's got access to you, in other words, you're in its area, it can get you. And that's all there is to it. But having said that, thanks again so much for coming on and sharing the details of those experiences with us, Ethan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm glad I could do it, and I hope it helps somebody.
Oh, I'm sure it has. I don't doubt that at all. Well, thanks again so much for your time, and have a great night.
Okay, you too.
Thanks. We'll see ya.
All right, bye.
And for everyone listening, if you've had a dogman encounter and would like to speak with me about it, like Ethan said, you don't have to come on the show. That's never a requirement. All you would need to do is please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. If you do that, then I'll be more than happy to schedule a conversation with you. But for everyone listening also, thanks so much for tuning into this special episode and just for supporting the show in general. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it. But having said that, thanks again so much and have a great night.